We'll call the October 27, 2022 area planning meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Secretary, roll call, please.
Darren Price.
Here.
Leota King. Present. Brian Durham.
Here.
Dale Munson. Gary Naylor.
Present.
Robert Stewart.
Here.
Brian Robb.
Here.
Bill Mackey.
Here.
And Darrell Drew. And Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Jeff Wessling.
Present.
And Beverly Rudin.
Awesome. We have a quorum. In front of you, you should have the June 23rd, 2022 minutes. Are those the only minutes that we have this
That's the
evening?
only ones I have.
I would entertain a motion to accept those.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
And a second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Okay, I have one question that is, have you had the opportunity to see what we're actually outstanding as far as the minutes? Okay,
I'll get with you.
okay, that'll be good, yep.
Okay.
And if you need any assistance going over some of these things, please let me know.
The one up at the Miller Building is the one I'm struggling.
Oh, didn't you say Brian was the one you had the most difficulty
I
with?
can't hear him.
Okay, I'll sit down with you. I can read my own lips, I think. Or remember what I said.
What I thought I would do is go to work and shut myself in my office and turn the speakers up on my computer,
Okay.
because I can't hear it at
Oh,
home.
it's just faint. Oh, he's not mumbling, he's just faint.
Faint.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Okay.
That's good to know.
Item number one on the agenda this evening, Solar Energy Project Committee. We have Mason Gordon from Hoosier Solar and John McCain, the Director of the Rush County Economic Development. Gentlemen?
Hi, I'm Mason Gordon. I work for HWC Engineering on contract with Hoosier Solar. Normally I would have some Hoosier Solar business cards, but apparently I've ran out of them, so I'll toss around some HWC business cards. But I represent Hoosier Solar, who is looking at a large-scale, utility-scale solar development in Rush and Fayette counties on the border of the two counties in the Glenwood area. I believe my colleague Andrew Hinckley came and spoke to the APC back in July and gave you the initial details of the project. At that point, we had plans of signing lease options in Fayette County, and I'm happy to report that we have signed lease options in Fayette County. And you know, we're here to encourage you all to start thinking about you know, how you want to handle the approval process of getting a solar project officially permitted. I understand this is the first utility scale project that you all will have to consider. So we're just here to say we've got lease options in Fayette County, and we're not ready necessarily to bring in application before you at your next meeting, but just want to make sure that you're thinking about how exactly you want to handle that process. A large portion of the project is in Rush County. A smaller portion of the project is in Fayette County. So we have been working hand in hand with John McCain, who's here with me tonight, who is the Executive Director of the Rush County Economic and Community Development Corporation, the Rush County LEDO. And about this time 2 years ago, Rush County was in kind of the exact same situation that you all are in, where there was a project being considered in Rush and Henry County, most of it being in Henry County, a small portion being in Rush County, and they had the opportunity to get their process figured out, and through that they decided to form a solar committee that was a small group, a research group that was tasked with kind of being the first layer of negotiations and considerations for the solar project. We've come before Bill and kind of let him know that we're getting to that process where we've got land under lease, we're thinking about preliminary site plans, and encourage you all just to think about. We've seen the Rush County model work well, and we're just here tonight to kind of explain how that process works, how the solar committee works in Rush County, and allow you all to make a decision if that's something that you want to do as well. So Ultimately, it's your decision, and if a committee is not the route that you want to go down, that's perfectly fine, but we're just here to share some information about how Rush County's committee works. So at this point, I'll hand it over to John and allow him to kind of explain the format of the committee, who's on the committee, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you've got after that. So.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to visit with you. This came about because I don't know if Mason invited me to come visit Bill or Bill wanted to know what we did. I really don't know how that worked out. All I know is from that meeting I got invited to speak at the county commissioner meeting and tonight at this meeting. So, and we're glad to do it. The project is a neat project, great investment to both our communities. 2 years ago, Mason's right, we had a group called it Light Source BP. Light Source is BP is a subsidiary of BP Oil. They also do renewables, and it was notified that there's a project going on in Henry and Rush County. Just the exact opposite of what this one is. Most of that project was in Henry County. We had 600 acres in Rush County, and as we as a community have not gone through one of those projects before, it was a little bit of trial and error to figure out how we got up to speed and how we did what we did. That is, I reached out to other people who had gone through it, so that was my learning process. And so for the sake of it, I'm glad to be here and help chat and answer any questions. I always answer you honestly. You may not like the answer, but I always tell you the truth of what we've done. And in Rush County, and what we did in Rush County was different than what they did in Henry County, even though it was the same project. So as we looked at what the financial advantages are to the community, big investment, lots of dollars. Do you know the breakdown of what, or a hairy eyeball of what the investment will be in Fayette County?
It's roughly a $270 million investment total, and I believe 70% of the assets will be in Rush, 30% will be in Fayette. So doing some quick math there, that's
You work on that while I continue. And in the project that we worked on, it was about $40 million that was in Rushville. And as elected officials in today's world, it's $40 million worth of investment that generally won't overtax your services. It's not going to beat up on your sheriff's department unless somebody's out there doing something they shouldn't be. If they catch fire, they'll tell you to stay away from it, let it burn, till they get their own people in to deal with it. As the process goes along, what's based as farm ground that's assessed at $12.80 an acre right now will immediately, once the project comes online, will be assessed as utility, which is somewhere between $13,000 and $15,000. So that in and of itself, the ground assessment's a big deal. What Rushville or Rush County decided to do in this case, due to property tax caps and things like that, where you can see a lot of, and I'm not sure where Fayette County is in that world, but Rush County is pretty deep in property tax caps, so a lot of that investment would have lowered everyone in the county's annual property taxes by about $12. And we wouldn't have reaped the benefits of that $40 million of development. So what Rush County chose to do was to provide a tax abatement for the equipment. Can't tax abate the property. You tax abate the personal property, the equipment. And we had our financial advisor say, here's what those taxes would be. So we created an economic development agreement that said, over time we're going to pay you, in essence, the same thing. We put a multiplier of 6% on it so that the community would reap the benefit of through the years that you make the best guess you can, make the best decision you can, but you don't know what the future's gonna hold. So that's what Rush County did. And that was different from Henry County. They chose not to do that, and that was their decision. I'm good with that. I'm good with home rule and letting those who do that make that decision. Yes, sir.
Not really, the only question I have personally is, what's the process for getting approval? You go before the area planning, I mean, I don't think we have a problem with the solar
Yeah.
farms. What we need to know is how you gonna get approval on it?
And that is part of the reason that I think Bill invited me here is to, in our situation, you had the county council, you had the county commissioners who approve 2 or 3 different documents. One's a land use agreement, one's a road use agreement, and one's an economic development agreement. However, you guys are, the area plan is actively involved in the permitting process and the like. So, and Jeff, again, we touched on it, and I don't remember, the decommissioning agreement is similar to Rush County?
It's similar to Rush County's, and the commissioners essentially will sign all the contracts.
Is that
They'll
something
enter
for
into
county
the
council? I don't recall.
No,
Okay,
didn't think so.
well,
the agreements will come through the county commissioners,
Yeah.
okay?
See-
The application for the actual project will come through Bill, and it'll go through the proper channels of any project that needs permitted.
And the county council gets involved because of the tax abatement.
Right.
So,
If a tax abatement is
Yeah,
If
that's
yes,
the
if that
methodology.
is the route that you all
Thank you.
choose to go. So for the sake of it, that's why all 3 work together. And for us to do our due diligence, because we did have to do a lot of learning, that's where we created a committee that consisted of 3 county council people and 1 commissioner, a county attorney. We've also pulled in expertise from the county highway director, surveyor, and when Bill suggested someone from the area plan, I think that makes sense. We didn't do that, but that makes sense because you're all ultimately
Did you even have, you
needing
didn't
to
have
hear
the
the
planning
same
director on it? You didn't have the planning director on it at all?
No. No. And I think that's a great idea, quite candidly, because there's no need to reteach everybody. Have 3 presentations when you can do 1. And so for us, that model worked really well. That board listened to the company. They negotiated, but knowing full well that whatever the decision that they make in the negotiation still has to be approved by area plan, county council, county commissioner. So they were the workhorse, if you will, through the process. They're the group that heard from financial advisors. They're the ones who heard from the higher priced attorneys. And they're the ones who work with the company itself. So, and that process we seem to think worked really well. I think it streamlined the decision making. And at the end of the day, within 18 months, by the end of this year, I think that project will be complete and they will start paying taxes and paying their economic development agreement within a year. So,
I would say from a land use permitting perspective, the committee didn't necessarily, that wasn't the jurisdiction of the committee.
Yeah.
But ultimately, in Rush County's perspective, it requires a BZA special exception, and that special exception was contingent upon the passage of the agreements. So
that was the
therefore,
recommendation I would make.
Yes,
Would be
so
the same
therefore the
thing.
committee's
Yeah.
role was to make sure that the agreements were done properly and negotiated terms were fairly agreed upon, so therefore to confirm and I guess validate the BZA special exception. So, you all are very concerned about, proper land use in Fayette County and ultimately that say will still be, held on this board. But the committee allows you to have those details worked out in those agreements that allow you to say, yes, as a whole, this project we are comfortable with, and now we're moving into the building phase of it. So
that's, I think, Bill, does that have I done mostly what you want me to do?
Yeah, because it's pretty much as explain, yeah, because you explain the different things they're directly responsible for. And then I think that as potentially area plan commission members, we could have involved on the committee. Okay, now, if Del Munson could potentially be the commissioner's representative, but if nothing else, if Bob would be interested, he could be one of the, it'd be ideal as one of the county council members, because he's also on the plan commission.
Oh, okay.
And Mr. Mackey, as the surveyor, is also on the plan commission. And then, of course, also his concern, his involvement with the county drainage board also. So,
And I can't say enough about the value of the surveyor and the county highway superintendent, because they're the ones who have to pay attention to the drains and the roads and make sure that
Yeah.
whatever the development is,
It's put back.
it's done right. It's put, if it's not right, it's put back to as good or better than before they came here. And at the end of the project, you want to make sure that everything has gone as smoothly and to the plan, and that's why the agreements that the commissioners will sign are really important.
Very important.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't speak for the county commissioners or county council, but I think, moving forward with some sort of committee makes sense, assuming that they're on board to send representation.
I thought at
Did they
the
do
meeting
anything
when
like
they
that under the
suggested that
windmills?
was the,
Because it's basically
they'd like to.
going through the same procedure,
it's the same procedure, but we didn't have this type of
committee.
committee with us, which I think would have been beneficial. Because if you recall, we had one individual in
you've lived
particular
through that.
was kicking up a fuss because there was one of the approval was contingent on one particular item. And I think that had to do with the decommissioning agreement. And as and insisted that, oh no, you gotta have that whole amount right here. But what was being proposed by the wind farm proponent was, well, we come back and periodically we need to then do reset and then have a period of time the escalations involved within the actual statement rather than all at once be like, boom, this is what it's gonna be, this is what we want with the bonding for
Sure.
the decommissioning. So, yeah, and wasn't very willing to understand that, and say, well, it's a better deal for the taxpayer to have that kicker in place.
And it's for us, and you're fortunate that you have Jeff. Man, I hate saying that out loud. But,
Smartest thing you've ever seen.
wow.
He called the other attorneys the high dollar attorneys. So he's the low dollar
Yeah,
attorney.
he's-
I think you should use. I'm
monkey
going to
with
give
a
you a
legal
tip.
degree.
The specialized.
Is that what it is?
I think
Okay.
they're, yeah.
But Jeff has been through it, so you guys, some of that learning curve you're already at, so.
Also represents the Rush County area plan, so we're going to be going, he's going to be sitting through all, I think he could already probably give our PowerPoint presentation about the projects. He's sat through it so many times. Also, the Glenwood Town Board too, so I mean, you're going to have, he's going to definitely know what's going on, which is great.
John, if I may ask,
Sure.
I'm familiar with the process of Fayette County's wind project or possible wind project. I'm somewhat familiar with it. I was probably more involved in Rush County's wind project than I was Fayette County because of my employment over in Rush County. And I know the headaches and both parties went through on those projects. Why was it so much easier to sell the solar in Rush County?
My opinion, you can see a wind turbine from 3 miles away. You can't see a.
Drive through Randolph County, you'll know why.
That's why. And
Or White County.
And some will say, I don't mind, some don't, and I think that's what I sat through probably the most I've been involved in public life since I was 26. And I think that, one, makes me very old, but two, I sat through a meeting that was probably the worst meeting I've ever sat, public meeting I've ever been through. Because I think both sides just said whatever they had to say to try to push their agenda.
Right.
And it's tough to negotiate anything under those circumstances. Good people, I call them all friends in most cases, but, they will for me at this point now, but I think that's it. Well, Jeff was at the meeting, when we had the public hearing on the light source, there were a handful of people that showed up, but I don't think any of them truly remonstrated against it. They were just there, they wanted to hear
You can't
what's
see them
going
from
on.
miles away, for one thing.
What's that?
You can't see them from
That's
miles
right.
away.
And if in time if you haven't already, you'll see a presentation where they're going to put vegetation up that should help mask it and make those roads look nicer as you drive down.
I guess I guess one of my big concerns, and I've voiced it on this board, is I'm very pro-ag. And
Don't mind.
we're taking several hundreds of acres of prime farmland out. They don't want to build these on hills and hollers. They want them on flat.
It's
The
easier.
best possible productive ground we've got. And I guess I'm just concerned about how easy we're just sending these projects right on through.
Well, and I'd say, for what it's worth, Gary, I think there are 219,000 tillable acres in Rush County. And when you look at this and the other, you'll have about 3,000 acres that are tied up into solar. I don't know that is such a drain on farm ground, one.
Well, do we have a right to tell a farmer what he's got to do with his
Well,
land?
and there's
And
another.
I'm still a big proponent of
Yeah.
It's his land.
private property rights too.
That is, I find, and again, I'm very pro-ag. I'm excited about Diamond Pet Food because they're going to probably buy corn from the area, and that's all good. But too many times I hear land rights. We can't do that there. And so that becomes kind of the rub along the way. And those are
Welcome
the
to my
things
world
I
of code
think with,
enforcement.
if those guys do their job right, they're gonna be out talking to the neighbors and talking about, here's what we're doing and why we're doing it and solve it. Bob asked a question. No, you asked a question. Why do you think the difference was? I think Light Source did a really good job talking to the neighbors and solving those issues before they came to a public meeting. I believe that.
Okay.
And Gary, I think
They
when
did a
we
really good
wrote
job.
the solar ordinance, I think, we really emphasized the ability to perform agriculture as part of that process in receiving an approval through the BZA. Like it, probably more so than most counties when they wrote their solar ordinance. And at least the counties that I looked at when working on it,
Well, my biggest concern was I wanted consequences for these property owners. I didn't want them to continue to be able to, for instance, be assessed at ag rates for receiving 10 times the income off of that acre. And the state of Indiana has addressed that, and I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful for
And,
that,
you
because
know-
that makes them think, well, do I want to pay those higher taxes?
Yeah, and one of the difference, obviously, between solar and wind is, again, it is close. I know people, the guy a little older than me, farmed his entire life, had, I think, 2 or 3 daughters. Well, they're not picking up the farm. So he didn't really have an exit strategy. So for him, it makes sense. For him, and
It's a residual income.
This is it. He's got his income, but at the same time, the property in time will still stay in the family's name. At the end of the lease, if it's not worth their while, they don't renew the lease. So everything that all the research that I've seen is it doesn't impact the farm ground itself, because it's vegetative matter that'll be on top of it.
The
In some
farmer don't pay
cases-
those taxes anyway.
What's that?
The farmer don't pay the taxes anyway, doesn't he?
Yeah, on the real estate. He's only
Not-
leasing the property.
I don't, I can honestly say I've never seen one of the leases, but I think as the lease, as it goes from 12.80 an acre to 13,
Yeah.
the company picks
Yeah,
up the
they pick
balance.
that up. The
Yeah.
farmer's not paying it.
That's
But it's part of the contract. I mean, he's
I'm
getting.
assuming,
he-
yes.
I mean,
I've never seen one.
but that property owner is still responsible for his property taxes.
Correct.
His share.
Somehow, some way.
Yeah.
Either through a contract with the renter, the tenant, or, I mean, it's still
I
his
don't
responsibility.
know the mechanism, but I know the company picks up the balance.
Yeah.
So,
But, about the comment with, I think I forwarded, it was back before I left, and I forwarded you an article about the changes in looking at trying to use actually more of some of the more intense agricultural combinations. So I don't know if things will be worked out before this, but there are efforts and to make it more amenable to more intense agriculture. But like I said, I don't think it's going to be in place for this, but somewhere down the road it will be.
And I mean, Purdue's studying right now, if you lift the panels really high off the ground, you can farm underneath them. I think, like you're saying, I don't know that that's happening.
Low crops.
Yeah.
Right, I don't know if that's happening now, but it could be, agriculture that looks a little bit different than what currently is happening in Fayette County. It could be, sheep could be grazing underneath the panels. You can't have goats because goats climb on the panels and
And they'll eat
chew them and
everything.
eat them to death. But, there's other ways to maintain that kind of.
And Gary, I think that's why we even
heritage.
changed our maximum height too, because we had it lower and raised the maximum height in the ordinance, thinking in terms of crop production.
Yeah.
I think we went from 25 feet to 35 feet as the
Yeah.
maximum height. Not saying that a project will have a 35-foot tall solar panel, but that's, it's kind of high, but at least the
Well,
ability to
and we
do it
did-
is there.
I think we did do it, we did address it in our ordinance very well. I think we did a good job. I just want to bring it out.
No, that's fair.
I want to bring it to the surface.
Yeah, I know, I have friends who are in the we passed a piece of property where there's a guy that grew up in my neighborhood that became a doctor, lived in South Carolina, but he owns a piece of property. He farms it out. For him, it makes sense to do. I know people related to this guy who the family farms the ground. It doesn't make sense for them. So that's as close to property rights as I can think of. And I don't think either of those are the wrong answers for what it's worth. And that one of the differences between, I think, solar and wind is the wind is, it's very obtrusive to the farm. In this case, we're just driving. They're going to just drive posts into the ground and put wire, and it doesn't have the same impact that to decommission a solar farm is a heck of a lot harder than decommissioning a wind farm is a heck of a lot harder than decommissioning a solar farm.
Yeah, there will be some driveways, but beyond that, we're pounding metal into the ground that can immediately come back up versus, pouring concrete 30 foot deep and things like that does irreversible damage.
The only question that I have for you, you're driving those in the ground, are you aware of drainage tiles when you do that?
Yeah, so there will be a drainage agreement, and as part of that, it's a little as county drains, very well documented on maps, on
next
farm
question.
private drains, maybe not so much, but we will do our best to make sure that we are not interrupting those
particular about
main
having
trunk lines.
Lakes in their fields.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure, that's a big deal.
no, that will be an active concern for us.
And that's the value of the land use agreement, to make sure that if anything's damaged.
Okay, well, I think one thing also is that, because there's a drive with, as far as the solar energy, because right now is that, let's see, okay, the two, IPSO and what's the, but the
PJM and MISO.
PJM and MISO. Okay, right now, in this part is that there is, Indiana, there are no solar farms in the pipeline. The companies in the renewable energy is getting away from the wind. And a big part of that is because the cost had come down dramatically with solar energy. It's actually because there's a lot of other things you don't have to do with the solar energy. It's actually correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the difference, it's the lowest cost energy source out there as far as including your investment. And because a lot of the maintenance that you have to do on whether it's oil, any of the hydrocarbons, you don't have the maintenance with it. You don't have the whims of the speculation market on the commodities market. So it's a lot of things like that are leading into that. But
And we happen to sit right near two large trunk lines for electricity heading east and heading west. Like
Yeah.
we just happen to be right in a part of the country that serves the East Coast and the middle states. So it works out for us.
yeah, and that's one of the reasons with the solar farm, Fayette County was so desirable to have as the primary piece.
Connection points.
I mean, for the wind farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, for the sake of, I'll give you my card. It's got my cell number on it. Feel free to call me. I might give you my card. I don't like to call you. But feel free to call me at any time.
What are you doing at 4 o'clock this morning?
Well, I was up at,
I just love to take up on that, you know.
I was up at 5 for my board, getting
Are
ready
these
for my
lease
board meeting.
agreements addressing the potential for livestock
I'm
usage
sure you know.
or not? I mean, currently?
Charlie.
That's a great question. I can ask that. My specialty is the permitting side,
I
not
worked
the
in
not
Rock
the
County for a
lease
number of
real
years.
estate side, but I can look into that, yeah.
Okay. I'm just kind of curious because I guess what
I
my
don't think
concern,
there's no,
Jack Clarkson even, it's a friend of mine.
yeah, it's permitted in the lease. I'm almost
Kill my
positive
wife
that,
on
yeah,
meeting.
they
certain
can use
grazing,
that, yeah.
I'm certain. Okay.
But I will confirm
Because
that.
I want us to be able, I want us to promote outside the box agriculture with this. I think we can help sell it. I think, I mean, with the farmers, for one thing.
Right.
Because let's face it, we have a large majority of our properties, farm grounds now are owned by non-interested farm owners, so to speak.
Yeah, vacant landowners.
They're just buying it for investments.
Sure.
And they don't care whether it raises corn or solar panels. And
They speak Chinese to boot.
and exactly. And if we can promote the outside the box agriculture and maybe we can get back into livestock production in Rush and Fayette County, maybe that's more appropriate for this ground, you know.
Well, and I've studies have shown that those farms that use sheep to degrass, to take down the weeds, are actually, when they go back into production, are very, very fertile.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because of that.
But
One of the things
know,
I'm thinking about.
that way we
Start
may
thinking
still
about.
keep some young people able to be part of agriculture. If they could still sub-rent that ground and graze some type of a livestock.
Because I think that I don't know how much it happens, but it is being done with some of the European countries that are relying on, increasing their reliance on solar energy. And one of the keys, of course, is making sure the structures are tall enough. And then, I don't know how much with the cattle with it, any other protections it might need to have to protect them from, fly cattle. So, but
And great research, universities like Purdue will continue to, obviously, this is
Yeah.
a trend, and I guarantee they're gonna be putting lots of dollars to figuring out how we
How
can
we can
maintain
do it.
ag uses on these lands, so it's gonna continue to evolve, yeah.
I think we're
Developing seeds that don't need sunlight. We
We're
led the way
looking
to
at
develop seeds that don't need sunlight. or
vegetable
water.
production and some of those other things.
Put stations in for those electric tractors.
Pumpkins don't grow well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So I think we're all in agreement to move forward, ask county council, county commissioners to move forward with a committee.
I don't know if that's our place, is it?
We can ask.
Well,
Make a recommendation.
Well, what I was asked by Commissioner Strong was to offer him some suggestions on membership. And so that's what we'll have this evening. Now, so it could potentially be, say Bill could be involved, and whether or not you were involved with the solar energy, or if, I don't know, if you're caught up in so many things, but I think either the president or the vice president might be another good person to have on the committee from the Plan Commission.
Or I can always make time. We're good.
Okay, but I'll let you two go ahead and talk up between you, because I know you have a lot of limitations, I know, as far as your time with work. So, but,
Well, I mean, I'm willing to do it. I'm working on the ordinance. I'd like to think that I know it may be better than anyone on the solar ordinance. At least I hope I know
oh, you
it.
think you know better than me?
Yeah. I think so.
Brian, correct me if I read your email correctly. Don't we have,
So that's the other part. In addition to the solar energy committee, reforming our technical review committee that we're supposed to do anyway. We can set the parameters for what requires technical review. I think
Basically, it's an
obviously
advisory committee.
large projects like a solar farm would probably need a technical review from more people than just Bill and the public hearing for the special exception. It allows something you might not think about, a different set of.
if we create, if we set up the technical review committee within the APC, why don't we just use that same membership to represent the APC with this other?
That would be,
Committee.
that would be reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
let's make it as simple as we can.
Yeah.
And there are
have,
some.
have the same people involved in it as much as possible so that
Yeah.
they know.
There are some
everything
jobs
that's
that
going
are
on.
listed in the technical review committee as committee members that don't exist anymore. A city engineer, there's not a city of Connersville engineer, but they're named in there as a person to serve on that committee. We can
But we could
fill
we could-
it with the
we could-
person who's performing those duties.
We could lower, we could say the technical review committee that our APC members will serve,
Absolutely.
would be willing to serve with the commissioners and the council.
Yeah, or,
Makes sense to me.
well, another approach is then, because the Area Plan Commission has the authority to establish an advisory committee for a specific project. So if you look at it a little differently, instead of thinking just necessarily about that technical review committee, but an advisory committee for the solar farm. And then I think that'll give us opportunities over time to deal with the defunctness of it. But, yeah, and I think that's something as perhaps and do you have is there a time frame that you guys are looking at as far as hoping to have site plans and enough else that is done to start the special exception process?
I would say we're not in a terrible hurry. Rush County, there are a couple of early phases that we're hoping that are much kind of smaller projects that we're hoping to start construction on a much quicker timeline than the larger project that's going to be in kind of on the border of the two counties. So I would say there's not a huge time crunch. We will probably start to move through the permitting process in Rush County, taking all of it at once, but mainly for the purpose that we've got those smaller phases that we want to get started and have a bit more of a time crunch to get done.
Okay, well, part of that is I just have a concern. I was speaking with some of the members before the meeting. This meeting is that, because right now it's there's two pretty significant projects going on. There's the Arbor Trace and then St. Gabriel, they just got their permit. There's going to be some coming on the line probably this next year. There's going to be a couple of dollar stores. So we're going to have those things. Other things that we will end up having is that at some point, I don't know what the timing will be at the hospital. That's a big project, and that's going to be a lot of time involved. So part of that will be so I can then make my request in the arguments prepared to the county council of like, man, I need to do this. For example, with the hospital, it'd probably have to be a contracting out of service for someone who has very specific skills for a hospital, things like that. But That should be reflected in our permit.
Maybe to answer your question better, we'll probably file permits in Rush County maybe by the end of the year.
Okay.
We're looking at definitely next year for Fayette County.
Okay,
So you are looking at the year of 2023 for
I would-
Fayette County?
we're starting.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we've got 2 months left in
Yeah.
Yeah.
no, we get it.
2022, and it's gonna be a stretch to get us.
Now, is that a project that'll work through winter, or is it, do you need to work on that during the construction season, so to speak, warmer temperatures, non-freezing conditions? Or will they work year-round on that?
That's a great question. I would assume they would want to be piling the metal in the ground during, when the ground's not froze.
Yeah.
First blizzard comes along.
Yeah. But that's a good, I don't know if they worked
I honestly don't remember.
on the Bellflower project. I don't know when they, I think they were
It
just,
broke ground in December of last year, but I don't know how much work went in it through the really cold months.
Look at 2030.
I mean, I think if I remember right, because my wife traveled through there daily for work in Hancock County, and I believe she said she met vehicles all winter long last winter.
They have.
What they did and how much they did, I don't know. Whether they were just putting fences up, perimeter fencing, or what they were doing, I don't.
Hey, it was 55 degrees on Christmas Day last year.
Well, we did have an extraordinary winter. I mean, last winter was a construction winter,
Yeah.
if any of them are.
I can't give a good answer on that. But if,
I didn't know whether it was like a bridge project. Once it started, turned off cold, it sits until the next spring.
and if, Bill, I can hook you up with a contact for the Light Source BP project, if you just want to reach out and give him a call. I'd be glad to do
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. I guess I did know the planner who was on the project, but I know Darren's moved on from Light
Well,
Source.
and Darren, so if you know Darren,
Yeah, I know
he's
Darren,
probably
yeah.
who I would set you up with.
Yeah, well, Darren was one person when we were working on the document for the ordinance. Darren was someone that I used as a sounding board for it.
Yeah, he's a good man, and, I mean, the decisions were all made while he was still sitting in your
Yeah,
position, but
yeah.
then later
Yeah.
hired on with them, so
Yeah.
he would be the one so
Okay.
you've got a good source to ask a lot of those questions.
Mason, one other question, and you may or may not be able to answer this, but back in the day when wind was the thing that we needed to be doing, those companies and those projects were coming and going in a revolving door, so to speak. There was companies selling out projects and buying, another company buying them up, and I think Fayette County's project changed hands 2 or 3 different times, and it still never got built. So are we seeing the same trend with the solar, or are these companies, is it a good enough investment for them that they're sticking with it and seeing them out throughout, or?
as Bill mentioned, it is as profitable or as low cost as ever to actually build the solar facilities. So I think you're seeing it's definitely a solid investment for those investing in it. And there's different companies have different strategies where some are literally just getting your all's approval and then finding the highest bidder to sell it to and run away. And that's
And I think that's
not Hoosier Solar's intention. It would be Hoosier Solar's intention to build the project, operate the project, own the project.
Yeah.
And obviously things, there's business changes, but the intention at the moment would be
That is their,
to build it and operate it.
And that's the same as the project, the north side of Rush County.
is it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember the lady's name from Hoosier Solar that I spoke with. Her name Andrea Dumas.
Andrea.
Andrea,
Yeah. Yep.
I spoke with her on the phone for probably 2.5 hours one day about
She's very easy to talk to.
about their intentions in Fayette County. They plan on being here long term, or at least long term ownership of the project. Okay, John, Mason, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen, I appreciate
Call
it.
with any questions.
Fight each other on basketball courts and football fields and things like that, but it is nice, especially a project like this where we can work together, and I pledge to you, if you ever have a question, I'll do my best to help you.
You're not out the door yet.
That's true. Mason, we got to
Mason,
go.
it's good to see you.
Great
to see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you all, folks, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Don't forget your phone.
Thank you.
I'll probably link that here.
Okay, we'll move on to item 2 on the agenda. It's a public hearing for home-based business. We will open the public hearing. As there are no audience members for the public hearing, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So made.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the public hearing is closed. Board discussion. Do we have any discussion for the ordinance?
The requested changes were made. Which I think there's what, 2 of them, I think?
Yeah.
We need a motion to accept it?
Yes, let's next
So
up.
moved.
Okay,
Second.
all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes. Comprehensive plan update.
I don't have anything to update with. Been busy and then with other things, and so I haven't heard from an update from the consultants of where the Okra approval process is at.
Yeah, and I know Oprah is still reviewing. We also have, going back to home-based business public hearing, a recommendation to the county commissioners. Is that part of?
Yes, so we can also recommend to the commissioners to make that amendments to the fee
Fee
schedule.
schedule.
Do we need a separate motion for that?
I make a motion.
Yeah, make it formal.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And the motion passes.
Question, Bill.
Yeah.
I just now saw this and I apologize. It says no renewal fee.
Because that's a
If
big
it
part of the
stays-
discussion.
If it stays under that current
Owner.
owner, there's no renewal fees.
Yeah.
If it
Yeah, because
if it
that was one
changes
of,
hands,
then it expires with the changing of the hands.
Okay.
Because I did.
I knew we
because
discussed
I
that,
did-
but I couldn't
because-
remember.
Because after your concerns about that with the one meeting, we discussed it. Yeah, I did insert that.
Okay, all right. I knew we discussed it, but I couldn't remember what
Yeah.
we decided on.
Yeah, because I knew you had concerns about
Yeah.
that. Yeah, because we really didn't want it to be used as a backdoor rezone.
Right, yeah. And it could have been,
Yeah, could have been treated as that, absolutely.
yeah.
On the item 4 on the zoning code update, I would like our committee to be able to meet again. Aaron, if you're able to meet. Gary, if you're able to meet again to look through that a little more expansive than just the special exceptions. I don't know what dates work for you, but we can talk after the meeting, set a date, and then bring it back to the next meeting. We also,
You want to meet before the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can work on didn't have the opportunity with the things that cropped up, but I want to put as we talked about with the non-conforming parcels, as we discussed, into some type of zoning code format, so that can be discussed perhaps at the November meeting.
we also need to set a special meeting date for November 21st for a regular meeting to hear a presentation about a TIF district that the city of Connersville intends on creating. That is the second city council meeting in the month of November. That meeting will be at 7 o'clock. And Jeff, do you want to say anything towards that? I know you were
There'll be a
involved.
presentation, there'll be a lot of information to be learned at 7 o'clock, and then we'll meet right after that. But if you have questions, I think they'll be answered. TIF can be complicated, but really it's a way to better use resources than general taxes.
So, we will be meeting at 7?
Well, 7's a city council meeting. We'll also be, we're going to be our notice is going to say 7 o'clock, we'll start immediately following the city council meeting. But if you guys need to be there at 7, that way you can hear the presentation and then
And
have that
we'll only have to
information.
do it
You'll only have to do
Only have to
it
do it
once.
once, yes.
Correct.
Okay, and what is the date of that third Monday?
November 21st.
November 21st,
Thought that's what it was.
7 o'clock.
First.
And that's here or? gonna-
Yeah,
You gotta be right in here.
in council chambers.
Be there.
Okay.
And that relates back to the comprehensive plan. One of the suggestions in the comprehensive plan was a way to fund projects not by general taxes. So it all ties together with the redevelopment commission. Director's report. Bill, do you have anything?
I really don't have anything else to add with that. But we did have one very large project. If you look down at the amount of fees that were generated this month, we almost doubled, okay, a huge chunk. And that was due to the new fee schedule from the commissioners adopted. And it was so it's an $8 million project. So it's a big one, so it generated a pretty big chunk of fees. And there were no questions, no heartache, and it was paid. And because I suspect that that's more along the lines of what they probably see in other jurisdictions.
And something else that,
I'll make a motion to accept the director's report.
I'll second.
discussion point, I do want to say something about Bill and his health. I don't want to say health. I don't want to.
Well, really, actually, you can.
Yeah.
You can, because I got to be open about it anyway, of what's going on with me physically.
So Bill has a bum knee, but it is what it is. He'll probably have to have surgery, which means
Is that all?
which means he'll be off.
That's
for-
it? We've all done that.
For,
Big
for
deal.
a period of time. He'll get a new one.
Well, a lot of you know that 8 years ago, I blew my knee out. And the surgeon, there's a lot to clean out other than just repairing the ACL. So over time is that the deterioration that's going on in the knee has gotten worse. Then at my trip in Montana, I slipped, lost a footing, my friend stopped me, and the weight went onto the right knee. And there's popping and grinding, and it's been bothering me quite a bit since. On some days it's making it very difficult to even do basic walking for exercise. So I'm at the point where I now need to, at the next wellness visit, is look at start looking at a knee replacement. And it's hard telling how long it'll be before I be able to return to inspections, because I have no idea how long it'll be before I can be permitted to return to a construction site.
We'll make sure we have none in Montana.
Yep.
So we need to be thinking about.
We'll try to make it
that
flat as
surface.
possible next time, yes.
So we do have a motion. We can have a different discussion afterwards. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The director's report passes. The only other thing I have is I would like the blessing of the APC to ask county council and the county commissioners to be looking for a contract person while Bill's going to be off, to look at contracting services during some very large construction projects that we have coming up in 2023, and to ask for a second employee in the planning office, given the amount of projects that we have coming up and going on in Fayette County. I think we're to the point that we're generating the revenues in the planning office that we need a second employee.
Yeah, because
But Brian, do we actually need both? A contractual service and an employee?
I think the big one with the contractual service is,
It could be one. You're right. It could just be one.
but what we'd want to look for any contractual services would be someone with very specific skill set when it comes time for the hospital. because.
And I don't disagree
Yeah.
with that project, but if we specify where we want that contractual service, I don't have a problem with that, but just to arbitrarily
No.
ask for a employee and a contractual service,
They're really two different things.
yeah,
Really, it's asking for a building inspector.
Yes,
Because the office level stuff, Bill can still do in one of those little leg scooters. Well, I want to see him rolling around in the basement of the courthouse. I'm just kidding, but
I guess my concern also, and as a past commissioner, if we had a building inspector / code enforcer, we could start enforcing some of our ordinances that are out there besides zoning ordinances.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we could better utilize that person. I know the city's trying to increase their ordinance enforcement, and maybe we could get some joint effort there
Correct,
as
yeah.
well.
I'm all for any and all options to.
I'm not sure that we
alleviate-
need a full-time building inspector, but in order for us to get the quality that we need, he needs to be a full-time person.
Yep.
And a full-time salary.
Yeah.
So if we can find other work for them, him or her, then we can keep them busy.
Absolutely.
And I think it's easier selling point to both the council and both city and county council and the commissioners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and Mr. Crawford, as he is my first building inspector, he definitely understands this. He's got a really good feel for that too. Yeah. And,
So,
yeah,
so I would
so
ask-
he understands the time requirements with it.
I'd ask for the ability to at least start that conversation between both the county, the city, county council, to secure those, one, that secure the services, and two, looking at the need for an additional employee, even if it's just for a temporary period of time.
if you'd like to have a motion, so moved.
Yeah.
And I will second that.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. And now
Do
we're
you
on.
want a recommendation sent to, do you want a motion to send a recommendation to the commissioners for this solar committee, or
But
tonight, or Phil? You said something about Dale was wanting,
yeah, well, he asked me specifically for some recommendations of people to sit on it. So I don't know if the area plan commission necessarily needs to make a motion for it.
okay.
But because we did have a discussion with people, and I will put forward just from our discussion, some members for it, which would be, of course, the surveyor, and if Bob's willing to serve on it as a county council member, then as far as a
But won't that be-
commissioner member on
Won't
it.
that be a council decision as a
Yeah,
whole?
It really should be a council decision, yes.
I don't think we should dictate to the council
No,
who
no.
they're.
And then I'm going to
Those
suggest,
got 3 county council members on theirs.
yep.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
and
we
I think
definitely
we
want
should
more
do
than
that.
one.
Yeah, I think. we
And then
should.
also then Gary or,
That's 7, so that's gonna be.
yep, then Gary or Brian, if you two can give some thought as to which one of you would probably more likely have the time, I'd like to include you on that suggestion to
The membership changes in January.
to the commissioners.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. See you next month.
and I declare the October 27th BZA meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
First on the agenda is roll call.
Second on the agenda.
Carrie Simpkins. Absent. Bill Crawford.
Here.
Jeff Fisher.
Here.
Darren Price.
Here.
Leo King.
Present.
Bill McDaniel.
Present.
Jeff Westling.
Present.
And Beverly Root.
We have the minutes that's on here.
This one,
That one.
June 23rd.
Okay. Everybody get a chance to take a look real quick at the minutes that she gave us.
This one, Darren.
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Okay.
Second.
Motion made and properly seconded to accept the minutes from June 23rd, 2022 as presented. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Next on the agenda is the public hearing, petition number 15634. The petitioners are Tracy and Lori Doherty, and they're petitioning for requesting 3 variances from the area zoning code.
But the flood regulations, emphasize the flood regulations.
Okay. The floodplain district, flood regulations. Variance 1 is relief of 6.4 feet in elevation from the Indiana 2-foot flood protection grade to permit the lowest floor elevation for a post frame garage at 753.2 feet. Variance 2 is relief from floodplain compulsory flood water storage, 1 foot. And variance 3 is relief from F4D, 1 acre maximum lot size for floodplain variance.
Excuse me, that should be 1/2 acre, my mistake.
Okay. I wondered about that.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Yeah, because actually the intent was because it's about 1 acre, so.
Okay, you will come up and kind of explain what you're trying to do? So what your plans are?
We bought the property and we plan on building a garage there. My wife's family had owned the property since the 60s. And then they sold it and we took one of her cousins and we bought it from them. But he had a shop there, a garage, he built race cars and stuff. Howard Baldwin was his her uncle. And we bought it because we want to stay close to her dad or family right there in that area, and wanted to build another shop there so we could basically work on cars and things. Since the 60s they had owned it, and they said water had never got into the house, but it had got into where the garage was at. So I did, honestly, what I did not know. Well, first I talked to Mr. McDaniel. He said we need to call the DNR. So we called the DNR, and they told us we was in the flood fringe, not the flood zone, so we was out of their jurisdiction. And all I had to go by was the local building codes. So we bought the property, and Mr. McDaniel thought, when I brought some fill in, because we thought, well, the garage is flooded, but the house never did. So we brought the place where the garage was up about 3 to 6 inches above where the house was at. Thought, we're safe. I did not know we had to have a permit to put fill dirt in, because they told us we wasn't under their jurisdiction anymore. So we brought fill dirt in, we bought a building package, put it there, and then they told us we had to raise it up. If you're familiar with that area down there, are you anybody familiar with that area down there at Alpine?
Yeah.
Well, they want us to build it 2 foot higher than the railroad tracks, which would put a driveway up off the road like this. And right now we're just just north of the property is where our pad is level with the 121. So as you know, it goes up our property, 121 is actually above our property. And according to one person I talked to, they said if we build it up where they want it, you know, that'd put us higher than 121. That would actually cause, if it was, you know, flood, it'd cause that water to divert to 121, flood 121. You know, so it actually, you know, do more damage there. But, you know, we're just asking to be able to build on the pad we've got now. You got the specs for what we brought it up. You know, we went, like I said, higher than what they said water had ever been since 1965 or 66, whenever they moved in there. And that's just what we was going on. We didn't know we had to go through all the other, you know, and then when we talked to DNR, like I said, and they told us, you're out of our jurisdiction, we thought, okay, you know, it ain't no big deal. We can go with our local, you know, ordinances, whatever we need to do and build. You know, so then we kind of just put the cart before the horse and bought a, like I said, building package and got everything there. And then they told us we had to raise the ground another 6-7 foot, which it just isn't, it's not feasible.
Okay. All righty, and that's on the first variance, right? To permit the, yeah. It's relief from the 6 feet
Yeah.
in elevation.
Now, the second one is that in our ordinance, it requires for every foot, say every cubic foot you remove, I mean, that you add, you have to then have storage, you have to then add storage, say, for each cubic foot.
Okay.
So that's required, say, you remove however many square cubic feet you remove, I mean, you add, you then have to have a storage area of that same volume.
You mean like a runoff, like a pond type one?
Yeah, some for detention, yeah. Yeah, and so the idea with that is so that it doesn't then potentially affect neighboring properties.
That's what I was wondering about that part.
So like a retention pond?
Yeah, retention or detention, yeah.
So will he have enough room to even do what we're wanting him to do on that?
That, really can't say.
No, we wouldn't have them.
No.
And when I talked to the lady in Indianapolis, she said that's not always, she said that's what we like, but that's not always has to be done. The lady at the I can't remember her name.
Nita Nance.
Yeah, Nita Nance, you know, I'd asked her about that. She said, well, a lot of times that's what they want you to do, but you don't have to all the time, but that's what they like you to do. That's what she told us.
Yeah.
And that's where they're actually asking for the variance on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that one is specific to us, but that isn't specific to either FEMA or the state, or the state floodplain regulations. Now, the third one is and this gets into FEMA rules, is the 1/2 acre maximum size of the lot. And if you looked in the attachments, you'll see the FEMA requirements for variances.
I saw that.
Yeah, and that's on, okay. So you go to 4, that's the one with the response from,
Sit down if you want.
okay, that's the response from Nita Nance to her analysis of the 3 variances request. Okay, it's number 5, the FEMA variance guidelines. And that explains the lots of 1/2 acre or less. Okay, this is from the actual federal rules. While the granting of variances generally is limited to a lot size less than 1/2 acre, set forth in paragraph A2 of the section, deviations from that limit may occur. However, as the lot size increases beyond 1/2 acre, the technical justification required for issuing a variance increases. Variances may be issued by a community for new construction and substantial improvements to be erected on a lot of 1/2 acre or less in size, contiguous to and surrounded by lots with existing structures constructed below the base flood elevation in conformance with the procedures in paragraphs A3, 4, 5, 6 of this section.
So basically, they're saying that there's houses
Yeah.
and structures already around there that we could grant a variance.
Yeah, and that's where those rules come in. But the one that's critical to go back to is with in looking at the individual variances is the, looking at the responses from Anita Nance at the state of Indiana. And that's on attachment 4.
Is that on attachment 4 on this speed sheet?
Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
Yeah. Yes. It's right here, attachment 4.
I read this a couple of times.
Okay, do the board members wish me to read the comment letter into the record? It's part of the record, but,
I think that'd be a good idea.
okay. Okay, on variance 1. Okay, this is from the state of Indiana. Relief from the required flood protection grade of 759.6 feet to allow lowest floor elevation for a post-frame garage greater than 400 square feet at 753.2 feet, which is 6.4 feet below the required lowest floor elevation. The county is a participant in the National Flood Insurance Program. Participation in the National Flood Insurance Program makes federal flood insurance available throughout your community and makes the county eligible for certain types of disaster assistance. A requirement of the National Flood Insurance Program is that participating communities adopt and enforce floodplain management regulations that meet or exceed the minimum state and federal floodplain management requirements per section 153.21 F4 of the county's ordinance. Variances shall only be issued when there is, okay, now the first two are actually bolded, a showing of good and sufficient cause, a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship. Third is determination that the granting of the variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, create nuisances, cause fraud or victimization of the public, or conflict with the existing laws. And the first two are emphasized by Ms. Nance. Regarding the requirement for a showing of good and sufficient cause, Section 60.6A3 FEMA guidance states, a variance requested by an applicant that is based on good and sufficient cause is one that deals solely with the physical characteristics of the property, subdivision, lot, or land parcel under question. A rendering of good and sufficient cause should never be based on the character of the planned construction or substantial improvement, the personal characteristics of the owner, inhabitants, or local provisions that regulate non-health and public safety standards, such as aesthetic restrictions or subdivision homeowners associations. There appears to be no evidence to support that the requested variance meets this requirement. Next paragraph. Regarding the requirement for a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship, general variance criteria have been established in FI National Flood Insurance Program regulations under Section 60.6A. These criteria would provide the basis for each community participating in the National Flood Insurance Program to determine if a structure qualifies for a variance from the local floodplain management regulations. There appears to be no evidence to support that the requested variance meets the definition of hardship under the county's floodplain regulations, 153.21B37. Next paragraph, hardship as related to variances of this ordinance means exceptional hardship that will result from a failure to grant the requested variance. The Board of Zoning Appeals requires that the variance is exceptional, unusual, and peculiar to the property involved. Mere economic or financial hardship is not exceptional. Inconvenience, aesthetic considerations, physical handicaps, personal preferences, or the disapproval of one's neighbor likewise cannot as a rule qualify as an exceptional hardship. All these problems can be resolved through other means without granting a variance. even if the alternative is more expensive, requires the property owner to build elsewhere or put the parcel to a different use than originally intended. Variance 2, relief from the floodplain compensatory water storage requirements. The county voluntarily adopted this higher regulatory standard. This is a commendable step to further avoid increases in flood damage loss for human safety. While compensatory storage is not a federal or a state minimum requirement for participation in the National Flood Insurance Program, please note that 44 of the Section 60.1 states, any floodplain management regulations adopted by a state or community which are more restrictive than the criteria set forth in this part are encouraged and shall take precedence. Variance 3 is release from 1/2 acre lot size for floodplain variance. The county's floodplain ordinance requires that the variances to be provisions of the flood hazard reduction of subsection E2 and may only be granted, and she emphasized only, when a new structure is to be located on a lot of 1/2 acres or less in size, contiguous to and surrounded by lots with existing structures constructed below the flood protection grade. This is based on section 60.6A2 of the FEMA rules. Okay, the intent of 60.6A2, section 60.6A2 is not to place a lesser or no burden on 1/2 acre lots, but a greater burden on lots larger than 1/2 acre. Notice that 60.6A specifically states that as the lot size increases beyond 1/2 acre, the technical justification required for issuing the variance increases. The lot on which this structure is located lies on 1.11 acre parcel. The subject parcel lot is not contiguous or surrounded by lots with existing structures constructed below the flood protection grade. And she included a copy of the FEMA's variance guidelines, which is the attachment 5. And you will note the following statement in the guidelines. In all cases, the responsibility to approve or disapprove a variance rests on the community, not FEMA. However, FEMA evaluates variances granted by a community to determine if they're consistent with the objectives of sound floodplain management. The variance criteria are intended to inform participating communities of the guidelines that FEMA will use in such an evaluation. Okay, it may interest you to know that there are currently 49 federal flood insurance sponsored policies in effect for structures within unincorporated Fayette County, provided $6,050,700 of coverage. As the state coordinating for the National Flood Insurance Program in Indiana, we had encouraged the county's Board of Zone Appeals to avoid the approval of variances in the floodplain with no sound justification consistent with FEMA flood variance guidelines can clearly be documented. Okay, and the other documents that are included in the attachments is you have the aerial photograph showing the distance from the petitioner's property from the Whitewater River, from the bank, which is approximately 524 feet. It could be closer, could be a little closer, could be a little farther, because this was measured using the GIS. Now, second one was the National Flood Insurance Certificate. You also had a copy of that in the package, the petitioner's package. And in that, you have the elevation certificate prepared by a surveyor, Mr. Murray of Franklin County. And this is actually survey determined these elevations. And then following that, the next one is an actual copy of the elevation certificate survey for the Doherty petition property. Okay, 5 we referred to as the variance guidelines. Okay, the sixth is okay, sixth, which is which some also have in the included in the petitioner's package, but that's also the floodplain and regulatory assessment. As you can see, that the white line right there, that's the actual boundaries on the floodway. Now then, the actual location, the dot, that's the approximate location of the, of Mr. and Mrs. Doherty chose. Now, one of the reasons the primary reason I sent the Mr. and Mrs. Doherty to contact DNR is that the flood maps we have, when the floodplain regulations were adopted, the floodway was not mapped down this far south in the county. So apparently is now mapped, and I spoke with someone from WTH that's in the office, and they're gonna get the rest of that. So since that was in place, they're able to identify it within the floodway fringe. And unfortunately, a misunderstanding on Mr. and Mrs. Doherty's part is that they really meant was they don't need a permit from the state, but it didn't mean just anything else. Now then, what we also have after that is the attachment 7, that's the property card, and for the property, and then the number 8 is the email stream between myself and Anita Nance of DNR. And that's why it took me a lot longer than I had anticipated in completing the staff report for the BZA members. All right.
You brought our information together.
Yeah, well, and the other part was trying to put it to a usable format, form with those attachments.
All right.
So, yeah, it's seldom when there's this much information for most of these. But, okay.
Does anybody have any questions?
No.
No?
I guess the next part would be if there's nothing else with the zoning members of the public, close the public hearing and then open up for discussion among the BZA members.
Okay. All right. We'll now close the public meeting for the 3 variances. Now we open up for discussion between the board members.
Discussion, comments?
So like, what I'm seeing and reading from the DNR, that it appears to me that it's almost like, it's not a threat, but it's a recommendation that says that, this could affect the FEMA insurance in the county if we did something like this.
Yeah, that was my question.
There's always that potential. Is the process that would be followed is that if you, in that FEMA review on variances, if they find that you are not doing things properly according to their guidelines, is that there's a process where you go on probation to figure out, okay, now how are we going to then fix the problems? And those can be very expensive to fix the problems, depending upon the extent of the errors, how long and how many times something has happened. Now, if you do not fix the errors while in the period of time you're on probation, the worst sanction is you lose the participation in the National Flood Insurance Program. Now, what happens with that is that because every property that receives a federal grant that's in a floodplain, they have to have flood insurance. Anybody that has a mortgage, federal mortgage that's insured by guaranteed by the federal government, those have to have the flood insurance. Now, so if it is to be removed, so banks would then have to, the property owners under the mortgage are required to have flood insurance. So if they cannot get it, the subsidized flood insurance through FEMA, through the National Flood Insurance Program, the flood insurance then has to be on the open market. And the bank has to then include that, and then that falls onto the property owners who then want to maintain. They have to then pay that additional flood insurance at that rate. I haven't heard of one where, mortgages have been called in, but I don't know if that's a possibility, if that's ever been done, since it requires the actual participation in this program to maintain flood insurance. And that was the reason why Nance included the number for how many millions of dollars in unincorporated Fayette County have the number of properties with, and then the value of the flood insurance.
So somewhere along the line, I heard a comment, I think it was from you, that like he could put storage sheds on the property? Is that
Well,
correct?
yeah, that's the interesting one. I had a conversation with Anita Nance about that. And so I asked this, well, there's a limit, because there's two things that you don't have to do to go through all of this. It's if someone has, you get it one time, it's in the fridge, that you can have one addition does not exceed 50% of the value of the property. Okay, we've had, in my time here, there's been 2 of those, and they've just been small additions. One recently is a garage addition. But
To an existing building.
to an existing building, has to be an addition. Now, there is not a limitation, and it's under, was that 400 or 500 square feet? I think it was in there. Now, you can have as many of those in there. And so I asked Anita Nance, I said, well, is there a limitation? She said, no, technically there really isn't, because people can have a lot more storage than they really need, but if it was all fall under that, say, 3, 4, 5, 6.
And if they did that, they can't be attached.
They can't be attached, no. Yeah, they have to be individual units.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's the deal we have to maintain for continued participation with the flood insurance program.
And pretty much,
And the other part is also the participation in the flood insurance program. And there's the, disaster relief that's also affected by it, just as the 2003 flood is, we're federal emergency declaration. So a lot of the funds, a lot of the assistance that you get through the FEMA with that, it's limited if you don't take part in the flood program.
so where does that leave them if they sold all of it but a half acre?
And then they still have to get a variance.
'Cause I know the one variance was contingent on it being 1/2 acre.
Yeah.
That's what they.
Yeah, but they'd still have to
The
go
other
through this
two?
whole process. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because it still requires something for each one of those.
For the other two.
Yeah, because it still requires some type of variance then for the, variance from the flood protection grade.
And so, I guess I read that about the hardship a couple times at home, and now I'm hearing it from you. And I'm a little confused, and maybe somebody else can help me. Well, maybe Jeff, you can help. Why are they saying that this is not a hardship?
Why are they saying it, or why is it not a hardship?
Why is
I mean,
DNR saying it's not a
right,
hardship?
when I say they, that's what I'm talking about, DNR. I'm trying to
Their exact,
grasp that part of it.
right. Their exact paragraph speaking to that is, they believe that hardship means the exceptional hardship that would result from a failure to grant the requested variance. They do not consider this to be an economic or financial hardship. They do not consider this to be an exceptional hardship. A hardship under the law is kind of interpreted. I mean, that's a lot of what we do is interpret, okay? There is no box that you check and that means it's a hardship or not a hardship, okay?
'Cause I guess,
Almost every variance that comes before us, you can make some argument that there's a hardship,
Right.
that there's some reason that they want a variance.
but even if we made it a hardship, he's still got to meet those other requirements unless we give him a variance.
That's correct.
So,
Yeah, and so the idea is that when they say the exceptional hardship, it's more than the hardship that we'd have typically with a regular variance. And part of that is because of the potential effect on neighboring properties.
I see.
Yeah.
Because the water's going to go on somebody else. Anybody else have any questions?
And I still recommend you go through each one of the, each variance one by one and vote. Now, in order to allow the, Mr. and Mrs. Doherty to build a pole barn down there, you would need to approve all three.
Well, yes. Quick variances. You had it on here, didn't you? Oh, okay. All right. So, I guess if there's no more comments or questions or thoughts, we'll go ahead and vote.
I don't see how we can grant the variances without making it a hardship on Fayette County, because you're talking about 46 properties that may have all their rates increased. You're also talking about causing the whole county to be frowned upon if there was a flood and we needed FEMA assistance. And I just don't see how there's any way that we can prove these variances. I see no hardship that it's going to cause other than they bought material that they're going to have to either put on the property they own here in town or someplace else, because we cannot allow them to put that there. I know that my daughter went to school with a young lady who had built a home along the river, and I don't want you to see your barn go floating down the river, because her house did. It slowly, the river eroded it. There was no flood, but it slowly but surely came up to where they finally, their house just fell out in the river because the ground around it went away. And that could happen to your barn.
Okay, Mr. Mackey, okay, about how far did the river advance to the west between the two, the 5 years between the two maps?
Our GIS, we had 2012 photographs and 2017, which is what the current is. We're expecting, the state's already flown for 22, but in that 5-year period, approximately 40, 45 feet, it's went west, just in that 5-year period. And down on their end is the worst part, because when you're coming the north of that property up there, the river is more east-west, but when it comes around that curve, heading south, that's where it's eating in and moving west, is down more in the southern end of the property that's adjacent north of him.
Milltown's going to disappear.
Yeah. It's farther down than where he's at, but you're right. I can tell the river's getting closer. I mean, you can see it better from the road. All righty. So,
I make a motion to not accept any of the variances.
Okay, well, Jeff, can we just do that, or should we do one at a
As
time?
per, yeah, I think you can do all three.
Okay.
But as per DNR's recommendations, is that
Yes,
give reasons for? Okay.
yes. And loss of FEMA funds to the county.
which is basically what they said.
Yes.
Okay.
If you would rather, I will make a motion to say no to variance 1.
You can say all three. He said
All
it's
three.
okay. Yeah.
Variance 1, 2, and 3. That there's just no way to accept, you have to accept all of them or none of them, and I can't see that.
Well, like I said, one will help them. Okay. Got a motion made.
I'll second it.
Motion made and properly seconded to turn down all three variances. All those, let's do a roll call, please.
Bill Crawford?
Let me think about how that's worded. I gotta answer it the right way. Okay, so you made a motion not to accept it.
Yes.
I say yes, I agree.
You agree with her motion?
Yeah.
Jeff Fisher?
So by saying yes, I'm agreeing with her
Yeah, the motion, yeah.
yes.
Your motion, too.
Yes, I'm just making sure.
By saying yes, you're denying the petition.
Correct.
Darren Price?
Yes.
And Leota?
Yes.
Okay, carried by 4-0.
Sorry, I had to vote that way. I didn't know how else to do it.
Okay.
What does it take to have Fayette County taken, removed from the FEMA program?
We wouldn't want to do that, because that, like they said,
The decision for that has to be the commissioners and then the county commissioners and the city council.
Could it be done?
No, that's a decision that still has to be made by the elected bodies.
Right.
It's,
if you got them to do it, but I doubt very seriously they do that because of all the people that's on FEMA insurance.
Well, for the privatized insurance,
Yeah,
that's what I talked to a lady in Indianapolis, and that's what she told me. You have to have FEMA to get the insurance. So I called the insurance agencies around town, and every one of them offer privatized flood insurance. So you don't have to, and then when I told her, she said, well, that's true, they are offering it now. You don't have to have FEMA now to get the insurance because they're offering it now, you know.
but FEMA, I think,
And that's just-
subsidizes it. But,
You know, it's just where this property's at, you know,
I know.
it's higher than anything around it.
Well, anyway,
Well, I understand where you come from, but, you know,
I'd like to give you a different answer, but I don't think
yeah, I understand,
it's not gonna happen.
but
All righty. Well, next,
now, you guys get your guys' signatures on that too.
okay. Yeah, we'll get that before I leave.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda is the director's report.
Make a motion to accept the director's report.
second.
Motion made and properly seconded to accept the director's report. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right, anybody got anything for the good of the order that they want to bring up, or anything like that?
And also the BZA minutes.
We already did that.
But you need them signed, right?
During the-
Need them signed.
Okay. Next on the agenda is adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
All right.
All those opposed? Motion carried.